Welcome to the first edition of the CPO Staff Spotlight, brought to you by the Office of the Colorado Child Protection Ombudsman. In this premiere episode, we sit down with Deputy Ombudsman Jordan Steffen. In July 2016, Jordan joined the CPO following 5 years as an award-winning journalist with the Denver Post. Through years of reporting, she researched long-standing state policies, shed light into shortcomings that repeatedly led to the abuse of children, and explained systemic issues within the state system. Since joining the CPO, Jordan has played a critical role in developing better policies, researching systemic issues, and promoting our efforts nationally. We sat down with Jordan for the following interview where she shares her experiences and passion for creating a more effective child protection system for children, families, and communities across our state.
When I started reporting on the child protection system, that was really my first introduction into child welfare and child protection broadly. And what I really remember as resonating with me was how intricate this system was. I think I went into that reporting similar to a lot of people, assuming that there was one entity, child welfare, that was responsible for the care and protection of children. And what I really quickly learned was there's multiple entities, law enforcement, schools, behavioral health, mental health, doctors. Everyone is involved in these cases. And what really struck me immediately was how well or how poorly those systems coordinate. So for example, one of the first things I learned about, and this is way back in 2011, so it's improved since, but was really the coordination between, for example, child welfare and law enforcement agencies. And at the time we were reporting the story, there weren't MOUs between all those entities in the states. And so it just became very apparent very quickly to me how many entities are involved and how crucial it is that there's strong coordination, not only in providing services, but strong coordination in understanding what the other one does, where those lines cross, and where creativity was really required between those entities. When I present across the country or at conferences, I always talk about how I have such a wonderful gift in how I came to know the Child Protection Ombudsman Office, and that really was, I covered it. I was first introduced to the Ombudsman Office when it was still a contract program underneath the Department of Human Services. I was covering a child fatality at the time, and that was my first introduction. And then I followed the progression of the Ombudsman Office as it transitioned from being that contract program into an independent agency. And watching that legislation go and looking at how people talked about the office, it was so apparent the potential that an agency like this holds. And I didn't know very much about ombudsman work at the time, but the notion of this separate entity that sits in neutrality and objectivity and has unimpeded access to information and data, as a member of the public, it seemed like something that would be an incredible utility to the people of the state. And so I immediately recognized the potential of this agency, particularly having kind of dipped my toe into child protection issues. So it was really that potential, once it became an independent agency and a situated as it is today, that really drew me into it. And once Stephanie came on board, just having followed her career and knowing her leadership, that it became very appealing to not only get to help build and work on this fascinating new thing in the state, but to really be a part of something that was very different in Colorado and something that had not yet been introduced. One of the main things I've learned since really stepping into my role here and shifting away from my role as a reporter is that same thread. A lot of people are involved in these cases, and I mean from the whole spectrum of child protection, immediate safety to permanency, adoption, placement. There's a lot of players that have to know each other well, integrate well, and work together to really deliver the services as they are envisioned. And I think that that's a really important perspective, because as we work on public policy initiatives, as we work to drive change, we have to consider all the entities that are involved. How can they work well? Where do we need to shift? I think there are big conversations going on right now about the future and the role of child protection services in general. And I think we need to be very proactive in holding those conversations and holding out space for those conversations about whether or not the systems, as we implemented them, as we designed them 20, 30 years ago, if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing today. And so one of the biggest things I've learned about child protection since coming here that I really want to continue digging into is, what do we need to do to make these systems and these services the best that we can today? Do they need to shift? Can we improve them as they exist? Do we need to maybe bring in some new options for our citizens? Because I think that the thing I learn every day about child protection is it's never one entity. It requires all of us to come to the table thoughtfully, creatively, and with open ears. Because I think the one thing about child protection is ever shifting, like so much of state government, but because of the needs of our children are shifting every day for each child, we have to be nimble and we have to be thoughtful. And so just really learning and watching how those systems play together, legally, through regulation, the budgets, it's been a big key. And I can't overemphasize enough the funding piece that goes behind child protection in Colorado, how it trickles from the feds to the states to the individual counties. I spent a lot of time trying to familiarize myself with that process, because at the end of the day, we have to think about where the funds are and how that's going to draw into improving systems, modifying systems, reforming systems, is getting to know that funding. In Colorado, we're very unique in our county administered state supervised child welfare model, and how that integrates with all these other entities in the states that have their own funding stream. And so all those pieces together have definitely shaped my perspective on the child protection system, but also brought forth a huge appreciation for the intricacies that are involved. This July will be my 7th year with the Ombudsman office, and I think it's really hard to pick one achievement. And I think globally, what I'm most proud of is we've really built something new here in Colorado, both in terms of the services and perspective we provide in our state, but I would say nationally, I'm very comfortable saying that we are a leader in terms of child and family ombudsman offices. We're innovative in our programs. We push in our programs. We look for new ways to bring information forward. We're not afraid to hold hard conversations. And I think we've really established ourselves within Colorado and nationally as the entity that's going to strive to find new ways to do that. In 6 years, we've revised policies, we've revised practices, and that's because the brilliant thing about this agency and the wonderful thing about the staff and the makeup and the leadership we have in the agency today is, if it's not working, we're going to fix it. We're going to redevelop it. We're going to reimagine it. We're going to think about it. And we're not afraid to do that. And I think that's really led to the relationships we have in this agency with our other state partners, with citizens, and with our national partners as well. The one value that I really truly identify with this agency is innovation. And that's not done lightly. The ability to look at systems, laws, regulations that have been on the books for decades that haven't been discussed because they're hard things to talk about, because they're really nuanced, because they're complicated, because they impact dozens of systems and thousands of families every year. We do it knowing full well the implications of what can happen if we don't have those conversations thoughtfully. But what I really identify with this agency, and what I just truly love about it, is the innovation that goes on, and the ability to be brave and have those hard conversations and bring these issues forward in very, very public spaces. And to do that innovation out in front, where the public can become involved in it, where they can stay informed on the work, is something I really identify with. The impact I hope we're having here is that we're helping to break down silos and barriers in considering child protection issues across the state. That it truly takes every entity in the state, every perspective in the state, to come forward and be a part of change. And my hope is that we're creating that standard in the state by bringing together people to have these conversations, by creating meeting space, task forces, formally, informal, by facilitating these conversations, by holding out public reports. My hope is that we're just setting that standard that when we bring issues to the table, we need to hear from everyone. And that, by the way, includes children, youth, young adults, people with experience in this system. There's a lot of agencies out there right now working on this issue, and I'm proud to say that we're working with them and we're trying to bring that in-house as well. But my big hope is that we create that standard, that when we talk about these issues, everyone comes to the table, open ears, open heart, open mind. And while we might not all end up in the same headspace, wanting the same result, we all have the common goal of wanting to hear all sides. And I hope that's the impact we have on the big picture is the importance of those kind of honest, open, inclusive conversations.